the Teen Idols, which is IDLES Idols. And after a year of playing, we put out this first record, which I think this track is from.
There it is. Let's do it. This is Trans Am from Teen Idols, and the album self-titled Teen Idols.
Alrighty then. Well,
there it is.
First off, I should say that there's no self-titled album.
Okay.
This is a 7-inch. This is Dischord number 100, and this is not even actually the first record. That song was recorded. It's actually our first recording. It was done at Hit and Run Studios in Rockville, Maryland. That was done the spring of 1980. It's a demo version that we just sat on for decades, and we finally put it out as to celebrate Dischord number 100, which it's a 7-inch. It's a 6 or 8 song 7-inch, and that song Trans Am actually was a Slinky song originally. That was one of the songs.
Really?
Yeah. So I wrote that with my friend Mark Sullivan. But it's funny you play that of all songs. That one's actually even before the record. That's not even the first record, Dischord record. That's like our first demo. It's probably my first recording session ever. That was in the spring of 1979, and it was weird to go into a studio.
Yeah.
And first off, we were not a particularly accomplished band. We were kids trying to figure out how to play instruments, and going to the studio was exciting, but it was also rather humbling because you don't know you just don't know what you're going to come out with. And I think in that situation, it's funny, when I hear that, like, I love it now because I have this perspective. But at the time I would think, like, that's not the way it feels to me when I play it in practice. It's not the way it feels to me when we play it live.
Right.
And that's one of the issues with recording. Sometimes recording, it's like the wrong mirror. It gives you the wrong reflection. It's like it. And that's why it's really important to find studios that really actively try to support your vision. What it is you're trying to do with your music. So it's a funny track to play. It's appropriate in one sense, but it's also funny because it's even more rudimentary than I was expecting. That's funny.
Right. I mean, it's way back in the beginning, which I guess is, and we talk about in the beginning. I've been wanting to ask, can you describe the scene when you decided that Dischord Records was going to become like, we're going to put out a label? Can you tell that story? Were you sitting in the garage with his name was Jeff, I believe?
Jeff Nelson.
And whose idea was it? Like, you said, oh, let's do it, and Jeff was like, okay, or how did actually it come around?
Well, earlier in the show, I think I was just saying that the Teen Idols had, at the end of this, we had this tape, we had this money. Yeah. We thought, well, we can split the money up or make copies of the tape just for ourselves, or we can document it. It was a band decision to use that money to put out this first record. And as I think we talked about earlier, there was no other label in the world that was going to put out our record. Why would they?
Yeah.
I mean, why would they put out our record? It's ridiculous. We were some little bunch of kids from Washington, D.C. And I have to tell you that Washington, D.C. was... it was a convenient stop for bands that are playing in New York, but that's about it. There was no, can you name, for instance, a 1970s, like a rock band from the 1970s that really identified as Washingtonian?
I'll say not many. It seems like punk and go-go are the ones that identify DC,
That's
but the
right.
other ones tend
but
to shy
did you know,
away.
for instance, like members of Jefferson Airplane went to Wilson. There's guys or people who came out of there's a lot of great music in the Washington history, but for some reason, I think people really who were living here, they played music here until they could get out.
Right.
And I think it really has to do with the fact that the town does not support as a whole, there's no industry here. You can't, if that's the way you think about music, it can't really be supported, because that's the way this town works. Now in the go-go situation, they're super regional and they made it work.
Yeah.
Like the go-go guys, they really created something that was regular, and they were tenacious about it, and they were so localized they couldn't really get out of Washington. The go-go has never really taken hold anywhere else, with the exception of maybe Hampton Roads down there, and Virginia Beach down that way, and maybe somewhere in North Carolina, a little piece of it or something. But by and large, all go-go bands come from Washington, D.C. or the surrounds, right? That's just the way it is.
It's true.
And their go-go music was much more difficult to go take out on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Punk bands, conversely, like we lived to go on the road. And if you were from D.C., you had a chip on your shoulder. Because you're the people that didn't move to New York, right? Like everybody said, you got to move to New York. Because people who told me, like,
true.
I mean, straight up, there was a guy, he had a store right near here, as a matter of fact, in Arlington, and he told me, if you want to be in a punk band, you have to move to New York City. That's crazy. That's crazy to tell someone who wants to create that you have to move to New York or somewhere else to create. That is nuts. Creativity, passion, boredom, anger, expression, these are not geographic terms. These occur in all places.
It's true.
So I think our position was, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we were in high school, so we weren't moving anywhere anyway.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I was an elder and I was 18.
We'll be here and we'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're going to make it happen here. And that was the thing about punk. Punk gave that permission. And when I saw the Bad Brains, man, my God, what an incredible band. Or the Slicky Boys, it's a phenomenal band. There was bands like the Raz. There was bands, you know, the Urban Verbs and White Boy. There's all these bands that you would see, and they were just great bands. And we was like, we don't need to move anywhere. All the music is here. Yeah. And the thing is, if you identify as a punk, for instance, or new waver, at that time, if you wanted to see that, you could listen to records. But if you actually wanted to see it, you had to see local bands. Those bands that took that form, because there weren't that many bands of that ilk touring, right? So if you wanted to see punk or new wave music, the bands who were playing it were local bands. So it developed into a really hyper local scene. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out, this is a very interesting and weird factoid, but by the late 80s, the DC music scene, the punk scene, was so strong that touring bands had to open for local bands.
Wow.
That's for real.
That's incredible.
Like, touring bands would open for the locals because the local bands had the following. Now, this is also had to do with the fact that there was no radio here. There was no punk or new wave radio. So you only knew about bands through record stores and friends talking about records. That's about it, or magazines.
Oh, that makes sense.
But the bands you saw and heard all the time were local bands. So they developed these devout followings. So you had bands like Artificial Peace and Marginal Man and Government Issue and Scream, and I could just name Black Market Baby. I could go on and on and on with these names. But those are the bands we went to go see. So if a band was touring and they wanted to play a show in D.C., they would open for these bands. Because there's the band. So it's just Washington is a fascinating town.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating town because there's so much emphasis on the federal government.
Yeah.
That there's this shade that's created.
Yep.
And what grows in shade? Something nutritious and profound. It may not be marketable necessarily. But man, it's something good.
I love that phrase. What grows in the shade.
Yeah, it's something good, you know.
Yeah.
And like my father told me, you know, he said that D.C. is the town where movements are started.
Yeah.
And New York is the town where they're sold.
Got it.
Right? So I think that in a
makes
way,
sense.
So the idea that you can actually present a new idea here, you can have a new idea, and you can work on it, and no one's racing it to market.
Yep.
But if you're in other places like New York or Los Angeles, anywhere the entertainment industry is really strong, the moment you have anything that could be potentially sold, somebody's trying to sell it for you. But here, people just ignore you.
That's really, true of the local music scene today. There's so much great, we've got 300, 400 bands in the database of local artists, and most folks don't know about them. So it's kind of what we're doing with DC Music Rocks, but it's also true of the DC scene, which is there's beautiful art and beautiful music that's available here. And you have to find it.
There's a profound theater community here. There's great art here. And I'm not a booster. Don't get me wrong. Like, I come at this weird. I'm a fifth generation Washingtonian, so I know this town. I know the sights, the smells, the rhythms.
Yeah.
This is where I choose to live. My family's here.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the greatest place in the world. I don't think like that. I think that wherever you wake up is probably okay. You know, if you're waking up, you're in good shape, better shape than most when you think about it. And, you know, so I feel like
that's a really low bar, Ian, but I love it.
That is the highest bar.
True.
Every day is a good day in the land of the living, right? So that's the highest bar. And I feel like that because I'm here, though, I want to make good music or be a part of music. I want music speaks to me. And I should point out, by the way, two things. Just as I think it's worth pointing out, because I use the word punk all the time, and I just want to define it for people.
Okay.
That might be helpful, because punk obviously it has a lot of different definitions. There is clearly a sound or a look that is associated with punk, an attitude that has been associated with punk. These things there's some general kind of consistency, but largely it's geographic.
Yeah.
So someone in one place might be a punk that I don't think they might do things that I think are just, I think they're just jerks, and they might think it's punk. I don't think it's punk. I'm the guy. I'm like the punk that doesn't do vandalism, doesn't do graffiti, I'm the guy that doesn't get high, didn't drink. I didn't steal. Like other people think it's punk to steal. I don't. I think it's greedy to steal,
that's where the term kind of straight edge came from, right? If you look online, you're kind of associated with that term.
Well, I coined it.
Was that in an interview? It was the song.
I wrote a song called Straight Edge in 1980, yeah.
And it became a movement.
It became a movement that I'm not a part of that movement.
Yeah.
But it was, I wrote a song about the fact that in the 70s, while everybody was partying, I didn't drink or get high, and I didn't want to. And I was ridiculed by my friends. So I wrote a song about my right to live my life the way I want to. Yeah. That's it. And ironically, my probably all-time favorite musician is Jimi Hendrix. And there's a song called If 6 Were 9 by Jimi Hendrix. And in that song, the tail of that song, he says, I'm the one who has to die when it's time for me to die. So let me live my life the way I want to. And I thought, I agree with him. So even though it could be argued that he was singing about being a freak or getting high or whatever, because clearly he used a lot of drugs, it's what killed him. Yeah. My position was, what I heard was the right to decide how someone wants to live his or her life. That's what I was singing about. And it became, when I wrote this song, it resonated with so many kids around the country. I was surprised, actually, that it did. And then out of that, there started to develop into, ironically, first there was a reaction. There was a thing called the vintage movement. So I wrote this song called Straight Edge, and we were on tour in Minor Threat. And we get to a town like Phoenix, Arizona, and a gang would show up, and they would identify as vintage, and they try to beat us up. Because they thought we were a straight edge we were a straight edge gang. We weren't a gang. We were just a band. I was singing a song about my right to live my life the way I want to. So then later, a straight edge movement formed that was actually, you say movement, it wasn't organized, like there wasn't like meetings or whatever, but there were people who really felt like this was religion's too strong a language, but it was a code of behavior that they defined, and then they tried to hold other people to. That is contrary to my point, which was people should be able to live their life the way they want to. Having said that, I stand behind the lyrics. Yeah. I still live my life the way I want to. I still don't drink. I still don't get high. It just never something I was interested in. I don't think poorly people who do. People I love the most in my life certainly do. It's not an issue. If they're destroying themselves, I'm worried about them, but that would be true if they were if they were using heroin or a hammer. Either way, I would tell them that's probably not a good idea. Yeah. But going back to this thing about this definition of punk, about 5 or 6 years ago, I thought my definition of punk is it's the free space. And what I mean by that, it is a place in which new ideas can be presented without having to serve profit. So this is interesting. Like if you're an artist or a musician, and you have a new idea, you make sounds that no one's heard before, good luck getting a gig at a local club. Because local clubs, they are a business. Usually they're a bar. And bars require a clientele. Our audience is their clientele. So if you have a new idea, what's the audience for a new idea?
Zero.
Right, because it hasn't been thought of yet. So
you have to build it.
Right.
Which is a challenge.
So punk, for me, was an environment where the people gathered and said, give us your new idea. It didn't matter. Like, people think of punk, like, when I was going to see shows, people weren't, it wasn't just a bunch of guys with mohawks beating the crap out of each other. I was seeing crazy stuff. I saw people playing on kitchen equipment. I saw people, just so many weird performances. And really, they were challenging our ideas of formality. And formality is precisely the ideas that need to be challenged. You want to play a song?
I do. I want to play one, and then actually I want to hear about life now today for you. But first, I want to play. This is one of those songs that goes way back to many people know this one, but I want to share it with the listeners who might not know you. And this one it's the Fugazi song. I want to play "Waiting Room" and have you talk about it. But here's the song, "Waiting Room" by Fugazi. And that was "Waiting Room" by Fugazi. And that's you brought up while the song was playing. You mentioned a funny mashup. You were saying,
yeah, that there was someone did a mashup online. I'm sure you can find it. It's a Destiny Child song called "Independent Woman," and they've taken the two songs and put them together and made it. It's pretty incredible sounding. They did a really, really good job. I like when I hear that kind of stuff. I like people messing around with taking ingredients and making something new. I think it's fascinating.
Well, it kind of goes back to that mindset about punk, right? You're doing something different that didn't exist before, so trying something new.
Right.
Now, can you share life? I do want to hear about life today for you today, nowadays. What part of the city are you in? What is a regular day in Ian's life like now?
I live in Mount Pleasant. I've been there for 15 years. I have a 9-year-old son. Amy and I have a 9-year-old son. I still work at the label pretty much every day. I mean,
where is that located? You say work at the label.
It's here, still in Arlington. The
Got
Dischord house is still. I mean, we moved to Arlington. I grew up in Glover Park in D.C., and then when I was 19 years old, we graduated from high school, and we're just kind of living in a home. And our parents would say, if you're not going to go to college, it's all right. We'll find a spot. We also need a place to practice. So we needed a house that was detached, right? Because you're going to make music. And I grew up in a row house, and you can't do that there. It can be that loud, because people complain.
Yep.
Had to be cheap because we were broke, super broke. We were high school kids. I mean, a year out, I had a little bit of money, but I was working at that time at a movie theater and an ice cream shop in Georgetown. And then had to be relatively safe because we knew that when we opened this house up that all the other punk kids would come hang out. They were all still in high school. So it could be 14, 15-year-old kids, and they would come to wherever we are. We'd be the first. It would be like a place that kids would go hang out. So we had to be in a neighborhood that was relatively safe.
Yeah.
Especially at that time, we were punk rock kids. And though I wish in a way I could somehow illustrate to people or give people some sense of how much the other we were at that time. It's cliche to talk about people jumping out of their cars and trying to beat you up for the way you looked, but that was a reality. And so we found this house. It's ironic, actually. We looked in the newspaper under houses for rent, and we found this house over in Lyon Park here in Arlington. It's the first house we ever looked at. And we walked in, and I remember there's some college dudes there, and I go, "What's it like living out here?" You're like, "It's cool." I'm like, "Okay." And we kind of looked around like, didn't know, none of us had ever gotten a house, or we didn't know what was involved. So then the landlord came. He's an independent guy, and he brought this lease.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't know if, I just took a pen and drew a line through 1 year and put 6 months. Because I thought there's no way I was going to live for more than 6 months in this house. I just couldn't imagine being in Arlington for just for a year. It seemed crazy. A year is too much. At that point, it would have been the 18th of my life, right? So
Yeah.
I ended up living there for 21 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I bought it in 1994. So it is still the house. It's still where the label is based.
Mm-hmm.
We have a separate office where the actual, the actual work is done.
Yep.
But I still work out of the house, and so I come out here 4 or 5 days a week. Practice 4 days a week in the morning. I play with Amy and Joe in the morning. We have a new musical project. We don't have a name, but I think we mentioned it earlier. So we practice from 9:30 till noon. I play guitar, write all the time. I don't finish things, but I always riff. Just write. And I do a lot of time studying. I listen to music. I study music. I read stuff. I'm always thinking about things. And I do a lot of interviews like this. I do a lot of talking.
When you say studying, does that mean like studying to play the songs, or are you studying different kinds of music for influence? What do you mean by studying?
Some years ago, I stopped saying that I listen to music. I said I study it.
Yeah.
Because I take it seriously. And when I say study it, I can't play something, honestly. I can't read music.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been able to read music really, and I can't, unlike other people I know who I really very much respect, I can't listen to a song and play it. I can't do it. Now I can understand the movement of the song, and I might be able to replicate it, but I could never do what people do. Like if I hear somebody else do, I can't do that. The general shape, the chord changes, I can figure out by ear, because that's what I can play. I have relative pitch, so if you get me started, I can go from there. But I can't, but I know people who can listen to a record and then just play it. Blows my mind. I am not one of those people. But when I say study, it means that I think about music, and I go in deep. I study it. So I might go into, like some years ago, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I went into a Fela Kuti study. He's a Nigerian musician. And I studied and studied and studied. I just listened and studied. And I'm still studying Hendrix. Today on the way out here, I was listening to a bootleg recording of just him in the studio working out ideas. Just him talking to the engineer, trying something out and talking very, threadbare, but hearing, say, a song like Dolly Dagger in its infancy, where he's still working out the words and working out the ideas. I'm fascinated to hear how people work. It's just interesting. Also, I think this has to do with the fact that having played some music for so many years has given me a new understanding of the process of what they're doing. I know what's going on now. So hearing people who before existed only in like a pantheon, right, like gods, now I understand kind of the process. I'm like, well, that is fascinating to hear. Like, to understand the genius that was at play there is mind-blowing. I stand in awe of great musicians. So it could be Jimi Hendrix or Fela Kuti or Nina Simone. It could be Black Flag, who I think are all, it could be all these bands. I listen to all kinds of music. Someone said to me, well, what's your favorite genre of music? You must be punk. I said, no, my favorite genre of music is the music made by people who don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
That's the music I like. If it's a job, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not that interested in it. But if it's because you have to play, because something is buzzing in your head and you've got to get it out of your head to go forward, I want to hear that song. That's what I want to hear.
I love that. And I want to make sure that we say thanks and share with the folks if they want to follow what's happening at Dischord and the things that are happening with you and over there. Where's the best place for them to find that information nowadays?
I always just look at the website. You could just look at Dischord.com. But I'm sure that if you go there, you'll find. I don't pay attention to social media stuff. I'm sure that I know that there are social media things. I don't really care about any of it, but I'm glad that it's there and people like it. Go look at it. But Dischord, Dischord.com. And that site, it's been up for many, many years. I should say that one thing, if you're interested in Fugazi, that one of the projects that I worked on that I've been doing for the last, it's been almost 8 years now, is that we created the Fugazi Live series. And this is a section of the website, the Dischord website, that we've created a page for every one of the 1,000+ gigs we played. And of 900 of those things, we have recordings.
Wow.
Right, and on every one of them, there's information about the show, how many people were there, who played with us. If we have photos or other ephemera, ticket scans or flyers, we'll post those things. And for people who are interested, it's a deep dive, but it's there. You know, I mean, it's an interesting project. I felt like we had the recordings, we had the materials. Why? We were not listening to this stuff. I was looking through this stuff, so let's make them available to people. What's interesting is even when you create a site of that magnitude, which is massive.
Yep.
The internet is a giant ocean, and I don't think we don't even stand to be a fraction of a drop. But it's there if you give a damn.
If you want to go find it.